Epicharmus of Kos or Epicharmus Comicus or Epicharmus Comicus Syracusanus, thought to have lived between c. 540 and c. 450 BC, was a Greek dramatist and philosopher often credited with being one of the first comic writers, having originated the Doric Sicilian comedic form. Aristotle writes that he and Phormis invented comic plots. Most of the information we have about Epicharmus comes from the writings of Athenaeus, Suda and Diogenes Laertius, but fragments and comments come up in a host of other ancient authors as well. There have also been some papyrus finds of longer sections of text, but these are often so full of holes that it is difficult to make sense of them. Plato mentions Epicharmus in his dialogue Gorgias and in Theaetetus. In the latter, Socrates refers to Epicharmus as the prince of comedy, Homer as the prince of tragedy, and both as great masters of either kind of poetry. More references by ancient authors can be found discussed in Picard Cambridge's Dithyramb, Tragedy, Comedy, and they are collected in Greek in Castle and Austin's new edition of the fragments in Poetae Comici Graece. Life and work. Epicharmus's birthplace is not known, but late and fairly unreliable ancient commentators suggest a number of alternatives. The Suda records that he was either Syracusan by birth or from the Sicanian city of Krastos. Diogenes Laertius records that Epicharmus was born in Astypalia, the ancient capital of Kos on the Bay of Kamari, near modern-day Kephalos. Diogenes Laertius also records that Epicharmus's father was the prominent physician Helathales, who moved the family to Megara in Sicily, when Epicharmus was just a few months old. Although raised according to the Asclepiad tradition of his father, as an adult Epicharmus became a follower of Pythagoras. All of this biographical information could be treated as suspect. More references to alternative origins and discussion of the likelihood can be found in Picard Cambridge's Tragedy, Comedy, Dithyramb, and more recently in Rodriguez Noriega Gillen's Epicharma di Syracusa, Testimonios y Fragmentos. The standard edition of his fragments by Keibel has now been updated with the publication of Castle and Austin's Poetae Comici Graece. It is most likely that sometime after 484 BC, he lived in Syracuse, and worked as a poet for the tyrants Gello and Hierai. The subject matter of his poetry covered a broad range, from exhortations against intoxication and laziness to such unorthodox topics as mythological burlesque, but he also wrote on philosophy, medicine, natural science, linguistics, and ethics. Among many other philosophical and moral lessons, Epicharmus taught that the continuous exercise of virtue could overcome heredity, so that anyone had the potential to be a good person regardless of birth. He died in his 90s. Diogenes Laertius records that there was a bronze statue dedicated to him in Syracuse by the inhabitants, for which Theocritus composed the following inscription: "As the bright sun excels the other stars, as the sea far exceeds the river Styx, so does sage Epicharmus men surpass, whom hospitable Syracuse has crowned." Theocritus Epigram 18 is also written in his honor. Works. Epicharmus wrote somewhere between 35 and 52 comedies, though many have been lost or exist only in fragments. Along with his contemporary Phormis, he was alternately praised and denounced for ridiculing the great mythic heroes. His two most famous works were Agrostinos, which dealt humorously with the rustic lifestyle, and Epicharmus, in which Heracles was portrayed as a glutton. He also depicted Odysseus as an unheroic figure of burlesque by parodying the Homeric image for comic effect in his Odysseus Automedon. Additional works include reproducing a mid-4th century BCE accusation from Alcimus. Diogenes Laertius in his Lives of Eminent Philosophers conserves a late opinion that Plato plagiarized several of Epicharmus's ideas. He derived great assistance from Epicharmus the comic poet, for he transcribed a great deal from him. As Alcimus says in the essays dedicated to Amyntas, Laertius then lists, in 3:10, the several ways that Plato employs the words of Epicharmus. Quotations. A mortal should think mortal thoughts, not immortal thoughts. The best thing a man can have, in my view, is health. The hand washes the hand, give something and you may get something. Then what is the nature of men? Blown up bladders. Don't forget to exercise incredulity, for it is the sinews of the soul.